Okay, well, welcome everyone. I am Jessie Pellant, and I am Vice President of Membership with National Conference of Women's Bar, kind of heading up the programming. Here with us today, we have Melanie Herschorn, and she is going to run a Leadership Insights meeting with us. And we have a great handout as well for her program, using your story to lead with clarity and credibility. So thank you so much, Melanie, for being here with us today. And we're really excited to hear your story. Melanie has written her own book before, also runs big impact books. So we're thrilled that you're here and we're excited to learn more.
Thank you. I'm going to share a screen too to make things fun. I just have to figure out the best way to do that.
And the handout is now in the chat for everyone to download.
Okay. Okay. So can you see this? You just see the slideshow?
Yes.
Okay. And then it says, oh, wait. Nope. Give me a hard time again. Hard time again. Okay. Come on. There we go.
Oh, perfect.
And I just have to move us. And all right. Can you see it now?
Sure can.
Yay. Okay. So uh this is I love all this screen fun. All the screen fun that just is not all right. I need that to go away. And now you can see my screen. Okay. Give me one more minute. We're gonna take this, we're gonna take it again. Canva is being super fun and shutting down. And there we go. All right.
It wouldn't be a like a tech presentation if there weren't a glitch. So no worries.
Okay.
How it goes.
Okay. Because it's like navigating the Zoom and the this and the that. But I got it. I got it.
Good.
Almost there, everybody. My apologies. Okay. I think we're good. Okay. Jesse, you can see it?
Yep, we sure can.
Beautiful. Okay. So, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. When I attended an ABA meeting in Phoenix last year, I just felt like I really found my people. Um, you're brilliant. You have so much to say for yourselves. You're doing such great things in the world, and it's really an honor to be here with such an accomplished group. So thank you so much. And I know what it takes to get into this room. And you're not just attorneys, you're also advocates and you're leaders and you're mentors, and you carry a lot professionally, emotionally, and visibly sometimes too. So it may sound unexpected from somebody who helps attorneys publish and market books, but today we're not actually talking about selling yourself. Today we're actually going to be talking about your story. And your story is not just a nice to have thing. It's really one of the most impactful tools you can have for leadership and building trust. So when you can tell your story clearly, not on your website, in a meeting, on a webinar like this, when you have the ability to share your story clearly, you stop being just another attorney and you become unforgettable. And today we're going to be talking about how to find that story, how to shape it, and how to own it. And so, how to use it not just to connect with others, but to really reflect your leadership and your credibility and ultimately your legacy. Do you know what people say about you when you're not in the room? Do they say, wow, she's confident? She is so clear with her message. She's such a leader. Or do they say something like, she's really great at what she does? That's kind of a throwaway line, isn't it? That doesn't really make you memorable. And the thing is that most of us aren't don't realize this. It's that your leadership story is already being told, whether you're the one telling it or not. People are always telling stories about you behind your back, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it may not be exactly what you want them to say. If you've ever gotten a referral for a client and you were like, why did this person get sent to me? They are not the right client. Then you know people are saying things about you, but they're not saying the right things. So the real question is, are you shaping the story, or is it just the one being told by default? Now, this statistic always astonishes me that, you're part of a big profession and you're surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds in the country, many of which are on this call right now. But there are also 1.3 million attorneys in the United States, and that number is growing. So, what makes somebody remember you? What makes them trust you? What makes them choose you to represent them, to lead them, to advocate for them? Being good at what you do is not enough anymore. You need to do that, obviously, and you are, but what else can you do to elevate? And so it's not really about the initials after your name. It's not the years of experience, even though those things matter, but it really is about who you are. And even more than that, it's about how you share who you are. So often we identify ourselves as our profession, but the term lawyer, I mean, that could apply to anybody who has a law degree. So how do you really differentiate yourself? So before we go any deeper, you could be like, why would I bother listening to you? Who are you? So I'm me, I'm Melanie. I am the author of now two books. My newest book came out this week and it's called Lasting Legal Impact. Write a book that builds your brand, grows your practice, and positions you as the trusted expert. So you can tell it's for attorneys because I really believe in you and all that you do. And so I like to, I help people write books. We have them speak the book out to us in an hour a week. Then we publish it and then we promote it. And the whole point of writing a book for me is for you to have a goal in mind, whether it's to speak on stages, whether it's to be on podcasts or to host your own webinars or to be in the media or to get more clients. So I see a book as a tangible marketing asset more so than as a, wow, look at me, I'm so special. It's really something that you can use forevermore. And the way I started out was not this. I didn't even think that I would ever do this. I had trouble learning to read. So the fact that I now have two published books is mind-blowing in and of itself to me. But I started out in celebrity PR. And when a particular comedian told me off on my birthday twice, I said, okay, that's it, I'm done. Nope. And I went to back to school and I got a master's in journalism. And when I graduated, I had to move to central Pennsylvania where my husband was training. And I worked as an NPR news anchor and reporter. I was their afternoon drive person. And it was really great. And I planned to have a baby in a non-election year so that I wouldn't disrupt the all-male newsroom. And lo and behold, I'm 5 months pregnant and they lay me off. So there I am, unemployed and what I deem as unemployable. And the managing editor of the local newspaper called me and she said, hey, you want to come freelance for us? And I said, but I'm pregnant. And she said, I don't care. I said, okay. So I freelanced for a year at a newspaper and I got $4,000 that year. And then we moved to Arizona, where I am now. And I had an idea. I knew that if I were to go back to journalism, I'd be paying a babysitter more than I would be making. So instead, I designed and manufactured breastfeeding clothing. Right. Not what you would think. It's a bit of a left turn, but it made so much sense to me because at the time I could see there was nothing to wear. And so I wanted to help. And so I did that for 7 years. I sold the clothes on Nordstrom.com, on Amazon, in boutiques, and then I made a bad hire. And this woman I hired her to help me with marketing, and she belittled me every single day. And she would say things like, "How do you have a master's degree? You're so boring when you write." And so eventually I couldn't go into my home office anymore, and I shut the business down. So then I said, "Okay, what now? What now?" And the through line of my career had always been elevating people's voices. And so for me, it was a natural step to help people with marketing. And I, all of a sudden, authors started calling out of the blue, "Hey, can you help me market my book? You do marketing." And I said, "Sure, cool, happy to." And so it evolved from there. But what I kept seeing was these books were not so great. They could have been written a whole lot better. And I thought, what if I could help people write books too? And if it was around that time that a family member of mine was going through a really bad divorce. And as a non-attorney, I thought the results would be everything that happens on Law and Order and The Young and the Restless. And I was wrong. Turns out, you guys know things that we lay people really don't know and don't understand and rely on the media to teach us. So there's that knowledge gap. And so now I'm here to help bridge that knowledge gap because when you have a book, when you share your story, all of a sudden people get to know you and they also understand what they don't know, and often before they even hire you. So, all that to say, that's who I am. And I'm so, again, excited to be here with you today. In this room, we know everybody is qualified. That is not up for debate, right? But here's what's shifting and why the conversation matters now more than ever. It's that leadership used to really be about what you do and your results and your resume and your outcomes, but now it's really about what you represent. And I'm sure you've seen that shift on social media. You know, you're scrolling TikTok or you're looking at Instagram and you see that it's really about branding. It's really about your story. And it's not so much, well, wow, she won 17 cases. Look at her go. I mean, yes, that matters, but it's also about the perception and the story that you share. So clients aren't always just looking for the smartest attorney in the room. They are now looking for the person, well, now, but they probably always were, but especially now, they're looking for someone who understands them. You, they want to feel seen. They want to feel understood. They want to feel safe. We all want that, honestly. And you, as an attorney, have the opportunity to do that. And storytelling really is that bridge between your expertise and the trust that you want to build with people, with your clients, I should say. So this disconnect, when we leave out the story, what happens is there's a gap that costs clarity and it costs trust and connection. So they see what you do, but they don't realize why you are the right person for them. Whether it's in, talking with a potential client or speaking on a stage to hundreds of people. And this disconnect, unfortunately, it causes a break between your impact and your presence. So what do we do about it? Well, that's what we're here to do today. So you guys should have received a handout. So just make sure that you have it. Unfortunately, it is not fill outable. So either print it or if you want to save ink, just type in a separate Word document. So we're going to be talking about your story today. Your story moment. And you're actually going to be doing some work. It's not hard work. It's fun work. This is your fun hour of the day, I promise. So it's not that we need to share more. I'm not saying you need to like air all the dirty laundry. Certainly not. I'll never forget there was this woman who had she was not an attorney, she had a baby brand. This was back in my baby brand days. And she did an entire video on Instagram about her feet and how she had a longer second toe than big toe. And I remember thinking, how is this going to sell pacifiers? And yet it did. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about oversharing or posting too much. It's just about share what you share, being really precise and specific about what we share and how we share it. So, for example, you heard me tell my story, right? You know how many times I have told that story about myself and how I have used the exact same words. In fact, I know it backwards and forwards so that I just launch into it and I start talking and I don't even have to think anymore. And that's what I want for you as well, where you can just have a story, you just blurt it out and it makes a difference for you. Because the ability to communicate clearly will really land and it'll make a difference. So we know that the people who get remembered are the ones who people know what they stand for. And that's what strategic storytelling can do. So I want you to think about, what is one moment that shaped you as a leader? Okay, now just hold that thought. Because we now have a simple story framework that we are going to use. So every story has three parts. Now, you may say it's a beginning, middle, and end. Yes, but being strategic, like we are, we want to start with, what is a challenge or a decision point that you were facing? Then I want you to think about what shifted. What did you realize? What did you do or change? Maybe it was when you spoke up. Maybe it was when you didn't and you realized that you should have. It can be a small moment that stuck with you. And then finally, what do you do now to lead or live by it? How has it shaped you as a leader today? Okay. So now I'd like you to take a minute. I'll watch the clock for you, and I want you to just write down the answers to these questions. Doesn't have to be, cursive writing. It doesn't have to be full sentences. I just want you to start thinking about it. So I'll give you an example that we can, I can give you an example that we can go from here and really quickly, just so you can see. So here's an example of a simple structure for this. It's the tension, the turn, the takeaway. So, it's not about telling your life story. It's really talking about one moment in time. So you can see here, early in my career, I was in a deposition with 3 senior male attorneys. I had done most of the prep work, but when it came time to speak, I didn't. I froze. I told myself I was being respectful, but really, I just didn't want to be seen as difficult or pushy. I wish this stuff weren't actually real. But anyway, the turn is, afterward, the client pulled me aside and said, I was waiting for you to jump in. I could tell you knew more than anybody else. And the takeaway is, well, I don't shy away anymore from speaking. Even if my voice is shaky, I'm still going to talk. And I mentor other women in my firm to do the same. That's really powerful. That was probably an hour of that person's life. And it not only is impactful to you, to me, but it changed the trajectory of their career for sure and how she leads. So now going back to your work today. So please go ahead, and I'm going to give you till the 25. It's 9:25 here. I don't know what 25 it is for you, or it will be 9:25. It's 22 right now. So you have 3 minutes. So please take the time to think about, what was a challenge? What were you navigating? Maybe it was external or even internal. And the point is that something was at stake. So the challenge, and I wouldn't be surprised if the minute I suggested this, something came into your mind. So don't fight it, just go with it. There's no exam, I promise. Then when you think about the turn, so something shifted, you made a decision, good, bad, or otherwise, and you changed direction, and whether you were happy with the outcome or not, you got clarity from it. And then finally, what do you carry with you now because of that moment? What changed in how you show up and how you lead and how you speak and how you interact with peers? And it doesn't need to be a big dramatic arc. It just needs to be clear. Because one clean story told with confidence can do more for your presence than a bazillion polished bios that say, well, in 1901, I was born. Not helpful. Okay, I will stop talking now. 2 minutes. So if you have any questions or if you have any desire to share, we'd love to see it in the chat. Okay, put your pencils down. I hate that. Just kidding. That always gave me such anxiety in school. No, I just have one more essay I have to write. Okay, so where does your story belong? Well, in your introductions. Hey, remember I just told you a story at the beginning of this webinar? In your bio, on LinkedIn, on your firm's website, anywhere you are building trust. When you're mentoring somebody, when you're hiring somebody, when you are having team building conversations, it's not like you're launching into this long memoir. It's just a moment in time that really illustrates you and how amazingly awesome you are. And if you're thinking about, well, how on LinkedIn should I do it? Because a lot of us are on LinkedIn. It's a great place for attorneys to be. If you think about your LinkedIn bio for a moment, there's a lot of space. And a lot of times we think that a bio is supposed to be about me, right? It's not, though, actually, funnily enough. Your bio needs to appeal to the person reading your LinkedIn page. So if you start with this story, yes, the story's about you, but they're going to see themselves in it. And that's really the beauty of storytelling in general. It's that it is our brains are hardwired to think in story and to remember stories. I mean, if you ever think about being in school and you were told to remember names and dates and facts, and it's all gone now because we didn't hear a story. But if you ever hear an urban legend, you'll remember that forever because it's a narrative. And the whole point of where your story belongs, we're being intentional. That's what this whole day that we're talking today is about being intentional with your story. And it helps you stop being generic and it helps you stand out. So if anybody would be interested in raising your hand and sharing your story at the end, that would be amazing. And this is a safe space, a non-judgmental space, so you are amongst friends. So please think about that. So, as you know, real stories build real connection. It's instant positioning. It's showing people exactly who you are, and it helps you attract the right opportunities. It helps you inspire trust, and it really helps you become unforgettable. You've heard of know, like, trust, right? That's what all marketers say. And it gets really, really, really boring. So I thought I would just talk about what it really means in practice. So somebody knows you. They say, they know, oh, I'm looking at Jessie right now. They know Jessie is the founder of Studio IP. She's amazing, right? Yes. Okay. So we know that. We know Jessie. But do we like Jessie? Yes, we do. Jessie's really adorable and she's fun and she goes on all these vacations and she lives in Colorado. We like her, right? But then do we trust her? And that's the piece that is often missing. And I'll tell you a story from my own experience. Several years ago, when I was starting out in marketing, I launched a marketing program for, a monthly program for a couple of months, whatever. All the things that online entrepreneurs do. And I did all the things that I was supposed to. So I had all the Instagram posts, I had all the emails going, I was going live on Facebook, I was checking all the boxes. And at the end of the launch, because I had a launch open cart and close cart, I still have a little bit of launch trauma, I'm not gonna lie, but at the end of that close cart, guess how many sales I'd made? 0. And that was a tough blow because I had really worked hard. And I had to go back and think, what is it? What am I missing? And it was exactly that. People knew me, they liked me because I'm likable, but they didn't trust me. And that trust is something that it takes time to build. But storytelling is one really easy way, once you get the hang of it, to build that trust. And once you have that trust, hopefully it is unbreakable. And seeing as you are an attorney, you are an upstanding citizen who would not break trust. So, yay, you. And I want to just show you how it looks in action, okay? So, this is a real example. This is Brittany K. Barnett. So, she's not just an attorney, she's also the daughter of a formerly incarcerated mother, and she's also a survivor of an abusive relationship with a drug dealer. So she carried those life experiences into the courtroom, and it shaped how she saw the legal system, but also how she chose to lead. And she is a co-founder of the Buried Alive Project and later co-led the 90 Days of Freedom campaign, where she and her partner freed 17 people from life sentences without parole for non-violent drug offenses. So when she was asked, why this matters, she said, because life without the possibility of parole suffocates mass potential as it buries people alive. So it's really not about being emotional, but it is about sharing. I'm sure she's not proud of her mother and what her mother endured. I'm sure she's not thrilled that she was in an abusive relationship with a drug dealer, but she doesn't shy away from sharing it because it helps build her trust factor. Because her clients can see, wow, she gets it. She understands me. And so not only has she shared the story in a small snippet, she wrote an entire book about it. It wasn't a liability, it was her ability to lead. And she's not alone. There are others. So I have one other example just to give you some variety. So Carrie Goldberg, she is not just an attorney, she survived multiple traumas, including sexual violence, cyber stalking, harassment from an abusive ex. And instead of hiding, she took her story and she owned it and she turned it into a legal mission. If you're ever on her website, you will probably laugh because it literally says fighting psychos, stalkers, pervs, and trolls right on the website and a-holes. And I giggled because I was like, she gets it. Now, I want to just say that you don't have to have this fiery crash to emerge as a phoenix from. You know, I understand this so deeply because when I was trying to find my why, as online entrepreneurs do, I couldn't figure it out. I was like, why do I do what I do? I don't, there are a lot of people, they some horrible accident happened or some awful death, and that's what changed them. But it isn't always that. I want you to realize that sometimes it's just a small thing. It could be something that a stranger said to you, and that's enough to share in a story. There's no right or wrong here. So back to Carrie Goldberg, in her book, she talks about all the details, but it's not to elicit pity. It's really to connect people with her mission, which is helping others rebuild control, privacy, and dignity. And so they're not just powerful women, right? They chose to lead as powerful leaders with stories that made them feel small once upon a time. And they, instead of leading despite the story that they experience, they lead because of them. And so when your story is clear and intentional and it's aligned with what you stand for, that's really when the magic happens. And here's the thing. You are in charge. I know as women, sometimes we're in charge of too much stuff. For example, I was sharing earlier that my son is home with strep throat. So I'm also momming at the same time as working. But this is a different kind of you get to decide. This is the fun kind, where you get to be a leader, the leader that you choose to be. So if you remember way back at the beginning of this presentation, I asked you, what do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? So I'm going to end with that same question, but with a shift, because you may not control every perception, but you can shape a story that sticks. And you really get to decide how people remember you, how they feel when they're around you, and why they trust you. Again, not your whole life story. Mm-mm. We're not starting out, I grew up on a small farm in the, nope, mm-mm. No, you lost me. I've never grown up on a farm and I don't get it. It's just that small choice moment. And that is really what makes you unforgettable. So when you lead with that, people feel it. And what's that line? It's people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. That is what storytelling can help you do. So if you want to talk about your story, you can get on my calendar there. You just, and there's all my information. And now I really want to open it up to people who are willing to share their stories today. It would be so great to hear. And you know what? You don't have to share everything. You can just share the idea of the story. Or if you have questions, I would love to answer any questions that you have because I know from speaking with hundreds of attorneys on a regular basis that it isn't always fun. I mean, you may love being an attorney, but it isn't always fun. And if you can infuse story into things, then it can make it just a little bit more joyful. And so that's why I'm here. And we can sit in silence, or um, you guys can ask questions.
Absolutely. And I think all you would need to do is just click the raise hand button and then there we go. Perfect.
Yay! We have a raised hand. And then what happens?
Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Hi, good morning. Hold on. Thank you for this presentation. I think this is very apropos timing for me since I am throwing my hat in the ring to become a member of the San Diego County Bar Association running for this term. But my I'm having a little bit of a concern about sharing my story or how to tailor it. Um, because I don't want to be trash talking other attorneys in a small legal community, right?
Makes sense. Yep. So what can you share high level for us?
Well, I was working with a male supervisor who was unable to acknowledge and accept their own shortcomings, but instead deflected about my managerial skills when I wasn't a manager or supervisor, but an associate. You know, writing me up for others' failings. And what was at stake? You know, I was standing up for myself, setting boundaries. I walked out, I quit my job, and I started my own firm. And now I'm a competitor and you know, doing well. Um, but that's not something that I really want to air on a broad level. Like, you know, don't want to create, I don't know,
I get it. What if instead of giving the details, you can talk about how you felt? I felt stifled. I didn't feel seen. I felt like I was being passed over.
okay.
Then you're not blaming that
It
idiot.
felt like a scapegoat, really. I felt like the scapegoat, not so much that I wasn't being seen. Oh, I was seen and I was heard. And I
Okay.
walked,
Yeah,
but
I
I
felt
felt
like
like
I was, yeah, I felt like the scapegoat. Everybody can relate to that. And you're not naming names and you're not blaming anybody else. You're talking about your feelings, and nobody can take away those feelings. They're yours.
okay, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. And I'm so excited for you that you have your own firm. Yay!
Yeah, thank you.
Yay! Okay. Any other brave souls?
Or any questions, you know? I kind of like, Heather, how you posed a question in terms of, you know, sharing your story, but also how do you present it in a way that makes it relatable, yet doesn't, you know, specifically throw people under the bus. I can share, I guess. I feel like I have so many, which was kind of hard for me to think about. How do you share just one? I think, you know, in terms of there are so many pivotal points. Um, for me, one was an attorney taking over all the work that I had done. So the first story you showed was really hit home 100%. I was an associate, but the client was mine and we had a temporary restraining order. I did all the work and we got there. And then this male partner stood up and argued it. And I was like totally gut punched that this was my client and I didn't understand. The discussion never even happened, will you do this or not? And from that point on, right, I try to give other associates and other attorneys their time, their power, the respect they deserve, right? Always as they come to the table. But I feel like there's just so many, other times I was told not to wear color, at the firm, right? You're too loud, you wear too much makeup, right? There's so many things that I feel like you can share and claim on to, but it's what will be most impactful. I guess that would be a question for you, Melanie, as we talk about this. When you are choosing from this array, of stories, how do you sort of land with one that should be what you put forward?
Well, you don't have to stick to just one, first of all. And it's the bottom line is knowing your audience. So if you're speaking to a group of women attorneys, that story that you shared is going to resonate. And then if you also talk about having to be colorless or, having to dim your light, basically, having to dim your light. Again, women can relate to that very heavily, unfortunately. So I think that having a number of stories in your arsenal is a great thing. And as long as you know your audience first. And that, that kind of goes to anywhere you're going to be talking or anything you're ever going to be doing. You want to know who the audience is. So for example, I would not do this webinar and give this to a bunch of construction workers because they wouldn't get it. I would tailor sharing your story to construction workers in a very, very different way. So it's really about knowing your audience. And I had a mentor say to me once, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. So I want you to remember that as well. When you're speaking on a client consultation, for example, if it's the right client, you can't say the wrong thing. And so if you do share, it's only going to help you connect with them further. Perfect example. As you know, I was laid off when I was 5 months pregnant. And that story used to be in my email marketing system. And so I would share it out. When somebody downloaded my freebie, this was, I don't know, 8 years ago, when somebody would download the freebie, they would get an email with the freebie. And then the next email would say, I was laid off when I was 5 months pregnant. And one time I got a response from a woman who said, the same thing happened to me. And then she hired me and we worked together for a year. Another time I got a response from somebody and it was not entirely English, but what it amounted to was, wow, you're a loser. Sucks to be you. And I thought, well, that person's not my ideal client. And I'm okay with that. Bless and release and remove them from my email system. So you really get to decide what you share. And all I can say is I would never want you to dim your light because you're afraid of what other people are going to think. But always know your audience, which I guess is two separate sides of the same coin, but
Yeah, absolutely. And then Melanie, as we are, thinking about our members, right? So we're talking an entire, women's organization that's full of a million stories like this, but a group of women that have these stories. How can they, as an organization, sort of amalgamate or create sort of the story of the organization to then appeal to more members as a whole?
that's a great question. So the first thing is to figure out what the members want to know. What do they want to hear and what do they want to feel? Why are they joining? Are they joining to belong? Are they joining because somebody said they should? Are they joining because they are the only woman in a 500-person law firm? Why are they joining? And then once you know why they're joining, that is what you want to share with them. This is a, now, and I have been in person with the members of this, not all, but many of the members of this organization, and I was welcomed like I was one of you. And even though I never went to law school, I chickened out from taking the LSAT. I did take the GRE, which was probably not as hard, but pretty much almost killed me. So I show up and I feel welcomed. I feel like I'm part of something bigger. I feel like you are all making a difference in the lives of women attorneys. So sharing stories from members, not just about, who they are, but why they joined and what being part of the National Conference of Women's Bar Associations has done for them professionally, but also personally. Maybe they've made friends that are lifelong friends. Maybe they met amazing clients or power partners. So those stories, I showed up to a bar association event and I didn't know anybody. And I was standing and drinking my drink in the corner, and Jesse Pellet came up to me and said, "Hi," and invited me in. And then all of a sudden, now I have a group of women who I can consult with and ask questions of and mastermind with because they get what I'm going through.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great advice. I can see some really good campaigns come out of that advice. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, last opportunity for questions or a share of a story.
No question is too small.
Okay.
And if you don't, you can type it in the chat if you don't want to use your voice. That's okay.
All right. Well, I do want to put a plug in for our summit because Melanie will be present and running a workshop on October 17th at our summit. And that is in Greenbrier, at the Greenbrier in West Virginia. And we're really excited. Oh, thank you. We've got it in the chat now, the information on Summit. So if you're not already signed up, please come and join us because it is such a powerhouse group of people, as you mentioned, Melanie, and I'm sure people would love to sit down and workshop their story with you. What a great opportunity. So thank you so much for everything that you gave us today, and we look forward to seeing you in October.
Thank you.